I'm James Sullivan, 46 years old, a tech entrepreneur living in Seattle, Washington. I built a data management software company from scratch, now valued at over $350 million. My success came from long nights of work, countless rejections, and a fierce belief that my ideas could change the world. But to my wife's family, I'm forever an outsider, a new money guy unworthy of sharing their stage. To prove my worth, I spent nearly $100,000 on a luxurious cruise aboard the Majestic Horizon, exploring the Caribbean. I thought this trip would change how they saw me. But on the second night, at a lavish dinner, my father-in-law Charles looked me in the eye and said, "James, you don't really belong in these circles."
Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video.
I grew up in Spokane, Washington, a small town where everyone knew each other, and big dreams were often dismissed as impractical. Our house was in a working-class neighborhood, with weathered wooden homes and front yards full of weeds. My dad was a plumber, my mom a sales clerk at a department store. They were hard-working people who taught me and my two brothers that you had to work to survive. But when I started tinkering with computers at the school library at 12, they just shook their heads. "Kid stuff," my dad said. "Learn to fix cars. At least that'll make you money." I didn't blame them. Back then computers were foreign, meant for oddballs or scientists somewhere far away. The library computer was where I found myself. I spent hours after school learning to code from old books and online forums. I made simple games like a pixelated racing game, and felt proud every time a program ran smoothly. At school, I wasn't a standout. I didn't play basketball or join student council, but I topped my math and science classes. In 10th grade, I won first place in a regional coding competition. I brought the trophy home to show off, but my mom just smiled. "That's nice, James, but don't let this stuff make you forget your homework." My dad said, "If you want to succeed, learn to talk to people, not just sit with a computer." When I got into the University of Washington on a full scholarship, I felt liberated. Seattle was a new world, full of ambitious young people and bold ideas. I majored in computer science and business, determined to turn my passion into a career. In my dorm, I started building my first app, a tool to help small businesses manage customer data. I worked through the night, living on coffee and bread, often falling asleep at the keyboard. In my junior year, I pitched my idea at a startup competition. I didn't win, but an investor reached out. He said, "You've got potential, but this market's tough. Got the guts to keep going?" That question became my driving force. After graduating, I stayed in Seattle, renting a tiny apartment with Ryan Patel, my best friend from coding class. Ryan was a programming genius, but more importantly, he believed in me. We turned the apartment into an office, with 2 rickety desks and tangled cables. My app started getting noticed, but the early years were a string of failures. I was rejected by dozens of investors, called a dreamer with no experience. One investor bluntly said, "Think you're Bill Gates? Get real." But Ryan kept me going. "They don't see what you see. Keep at it." Finally, a Seattle venture capital fund agreed to invest $15 million. That was the turning point. My company grew from a handful of small clients to thousands of businesses across the U.S. Today we have offices in Seattle and Denver, with over 200 employees. As my career took off, I met Elizabeth Harper at a tech conference in Seattle. She worked for an advertising firm, with a captivating smile and confident demeanor. We talked for hours about tech, art, and dreams. Elizabeth grew up in Philadelphia, in an upper-class family where image and social status were everything. When I met her parents, Charles and Patricia, I realized they weren't like her. Charles, a former bank executive, always bragged about his connections to big players in Philadelphia. Patricia organized charity events, ensuring everything was perfect to impress her friends. Victoria, Elizabeth's younger sister, was the family star, working for an investment firm in New York, always in designer clothes and full of stories about high society. They looked at me like a stranger, a tech guy with no pedigree. In the early years of our marriage, I tried to fit in. I attended their parties in Philadelphia, where Charles boasted about his finance friends, and Patricia asked things like, "Is your company stable? Tech can crash easily." Victoria compared me to her wealthy friends, as if I'd never measure up. Elizabeth, though she loved me, rarely took my side. She'd say things like, "You need to be patient with my parents. They just want the best for me." I started feeling like an outsider in my own wife's family. Every call to Philadelphia brought shallow questions. "How's the company?" Patricia would ask, but when I shared news of a big contract, she'd pivot to Victoria's new Manhattan apartment. Charles suggested, "If tech doesn't work out, I can get you a bank job, more stable." Those words made me doubt myself. I'd built a company worth hundreds of millions, but to them, I was still a lucky coder. After my company hit a major milestone, signing deals with 3 big corporations, boosting revenue by 40%. I felt on top of the world. That night, celebrating with my team at a rooftop bar in downtown Seattle, overlooking the glittering Puget Sound, Ryan Patel raised a glass and said, "James, you did it. Now do something epic for yourself. You deserve it." I laughed, saying I wasn't the flashy type, but an idea sparked. I remembered Patricia talking about her dream of a Caribbean cruise, a chance to mingle with high-class people and bask in luxury. Charles always dismissed it as too expensive. I thought, this is my chance to show my wife's family. I'm not just a lucky coder. A lavish cruise could make them see me differently, recognize my worth. The next morning, I contacted a high-end travel agency in Seattle specializing in exclusive experiences. The agent recommended the Majestic Horizon, a cruise ship famed for its penthouse suites, 5-star dining, and private butler service. The 12-day trip would stop at the Bahamas, Jamaica, and Barbados, destinations I knew my wife's family would brag about on social media. I requested 4 connecting penthouse suites, each with a private balcony overlooking the sea, fully loaded with perks, premium dining packages, spa access, and private shore excursions. I also added special childcare for Victoria's 2-year-old son Tommy, knowing she'd demand it. The initial cost was $90,000, a hefty sum, but I didn't hesitate. I wired the payment immediately and asked for digital brochures to send to my wife's family. I wanted them to see the grandeur of this gift. That evening, I called Charles and Patricia, a rare excitement bubbling as I shared the news. "Mom, Dad, I've got a surprise," I said, holding back my enthusiasm. "We're going on a Caribbean cruise on the Majestic Horizon. 12 days, penthouse suites, all expenses covered." There was a brief pause. Patricia responded, her voice tinged with surprise. "A cruise? The whole family? That's unexpected, James." Charles cut in. "Sounds interesting. What kind of ship? Who's on it?" I explained it was one of the most luxurious ships, stopping at places like Nassau and Montego Bay. "I've booked private tours, like historical sites in Jamaica and lunch at a famous seaside restaurant in Barbados," I added, hoping they'd be impressed. But their reaction deflated me. Patricia asked, "Does the ship have proper amenities? We need to dress right to not look out of place." Charles wondered, "Hope there are people worth meeting. In Philadelphia, we're used to selective events. Not a single thank you, just questions about status and comforts." I kept my tone upbeat. "I've made sure everything's perfect. The ship's usually booked a year out, but I secured priority spots." Patricia echoed, "Priority? Well, that's something, but we'll need to shop for new outfits. Can't show up underdressed." The call with Elizabeth was even more disappointing. She asked right away, "What amenities does the ship have? I need to know for packing gala outfits." When I mentioned the penthouse suites, she said, "Sounds nice, but Mom, Dad, and Victoria are picky. You sure it's luxurious enough?" I reassured her I'd handled everything, from special menus to spa services, but it felt like I was pitching a business deal, not giving a heartfelt gift. Calling Victoria was no different. Her first question was, "Does the ship have childcare? Tommy needs a decent place, and I don't want to babysit all day." I confirmed the ship had a top-notch childcare center, even a golf simulator for her husband David. Victoria sighed, "Good, but are there formal nights? I need to shop. David hates places without style." She kept asking if their suite matched her parents', as if worried about being outdone. I answered every question, but when I hung up, I felt like I'd closed a transaction, not shared a gift. In the months leading up to the trip, my wife's family's demands piled up. Patricia called weekly, asking about the passenger list. Are there interesting people to meet? And the food quality? Is the dining Michelin level? Charles wanted to know if there were networking opportunities with key players. Victoria sent a long list, specific diapers for Tommy, suite upgrades for more space. I met every request, spending an extra $10,000 to ensure perfection. The total hit $100,000. But I told myself, if they see my worth, it'll be worth it. 2 weeks before departure, I flew to Philadelphia for a family dinner at the country club. Charles and Patricia loved. They wanted to introduce me to friends before the trip. "Everyone's curious about this cruise you've arranged," Patricia said, but her tone was proud of being invited to a fancy ship, not of me. At dinner, Charles bragged about his finance connections, and Patricia gushed about Victoria's new Manhattan apartment. When I mentioned the cruise, Charles just nodded. "Good job, James. But next time, maybe look at the Royal Sapphire. I hear it's more exclusive." The comment, though casual, stung like a slap. I forced a smile, wondering if I was making a mistake trying to please them. Leaving Philadelphia, I carried unease, but I'd bet my heart and wallet on this trip. I hoped, just once, my wife's family would see me as someone worthy of standing beside them. When we boarded in Miami, the staff greeted me by name, offering champagne and escorting us to the VIP check-in. Charles nodded, admitting, "Pretty impressive, James. They know how to make an entrance." Patricia was busy eyeing other passengers, whispering to Elizabeth, "The Colemans cruised this ship last year. They said it's all celebrities." Victoria and her husband David arrived late with heaps of luggage, their 2-year-old son Tommy and a nanny in tow. David immediately asked about the golf simulator schedule, while Victoria inspected the champagne and remarked, "French, not bad." I smiled, trying to keep things light, but already felt an invisible distance. Our butler Miguel led us to the penthouse suites on the top deck. When the doors opened, their eyes lit up. The rooms were spacious, with silk upholstery, marble bathrooms and balconies overlooking the sea. Patricia touched the drapes, exclaiming, "My goodness, this is exquisite." Charles stepped onto the balcony, nodding. "Prime spot, you can see everything from here." Victoria and David were pleased, though David muttered, "I heard the owner's suite is a bit bigger." I exhaled, thinking they were at least impressed, but that feeling didn't last. That afternoon, I arranged a private welcome reception in an exclusive lounge. I wore a simple suit, waiting as my family prepared like they were attending a state gala. Elizabeth appeared in a glittering gown, Patricia in pearls, and Victoria in a design fresh from a famous brand. As we entered the reception, Patricia whispered, "James, you should have dressed up more. First impressions matter here." I nodded, suddenly feeling my suit was inadequate. At the reception, the captain greeted us, thanking me for choosing the Majestic Horizon, but soon my wife's family drifted away. Charles struck up a conversation with a retired investment banker, talking stocks like he owned the room. Patricia found women dripping in jewelry, eagerly discussing Philadelphia charity events. Elizabeth and Victoria got swept up with younger passengers bragging about Hampton's villas. I stood alone with my champagne, trying to join conversations, but felt invisible. The next day we docked in Nassau, Bahamas. I'd arranged a private tour of historical sites, followed by lunch at a upscale cliffside restaurant. But in the ship's lobby I saw Elizabeth and Victoria whispering with Charles and Patricia. "What's up?" I asked. Elizabeth said, her voice apologetic. "James, a couple we met last night invited us on a private yacht excursion. They've got an amazing boat." I hid my disappointment, "But I planned this tour special for us. The guide's a top expert." Patricia patted my arm lightly. "This is a chance for Robert and Emma to connect with important people. You understand, don't you, James? You can join us for the tour." I reluctantly agreed. The Nassau tour was enjoyable, but Charles kept checking his watch constantly, and Patricia kept mentioning the yacht that Elizabeth and Emma were enjoying. "They said the yacht's owner is a major player in finance," she remarked, as if that mattered more than the experience I'd arranged. That evening, I waited for the family at the ship's most upscale restaurant, but Elizabeth and Emma didn't show. Patricia got a text from them. "They've been invited to dine at the owner's suite with some new friends," she announced, her voice brimming with pride. "The host is a tech billionaire, really interested in David's financial expertise." Charles nodded approvingly. "Good opportunity. Connecting with the right people is key." I sat there, feeling like an outsider. They were enjoying everything I'd paid for, yet ditching me to chase more elite connections. This pattern continued over the next 2 days. My wife's family accepted every luxury from spa treatments to lavish meals, but always sought out more exclusive events with wealthy passengers. One evening, I dined alone when Miguel, the butler, approached. "Mr. Sullivan, would you like to dine in your suite? I can arrange a special menu." I shook my head. "Thanks, Miguel. I'm fine." But I wasn't. I overheard a couple at a nearby table mention Charles. He was talking about his banking career. Quite impressive. His daughter Emma's in finance too. But Elizabeth's husband does something with computers. Just luck, you know, new money. I left the table, stepped onto the deck, and gazed at the Caribbean Sea shimmering under the moonlight. Hurt and anger surged within me. I'd spent tens of thousands to create this experience, but to them, I was still a guy who didn't belong in their circle. In that moment I knew I couldn't let them treat me this way anymore. I had to do something, not to prove myself to them, but to protect my own worth. The fourth night on the Majestic Horizon was the captain's formal dinner, considered the pinnacle of the cruise. I'd paid extra to ensure our family sat at the main table, right by the captain, a prestigious spot Patricia and Charles would surely appreciate. I wore a custom-tailored suit, standing before the mirror in my penthouse suite, trying to convince myself tonight would be different. I wanted to fit in, to feel like part of my wife's family, even for a moment, but deep down I knew that hope was fragile. Over the past days, Elizabeth, Charles, Patricia, and Emma had made me feel like an extra, despite my footing the bill for everything. The dinner took place in the ship's grand dining room, decorated like a palace with crystal chandeliers and white silk tablecloths. Guests wore stunning outfits, from evening gowns to tuxedos. Elizabeth appeared in a glittering sequined dress, Patricia in pearls, and Emma showcased a haute couture gown she'd flaunted on Instagram before the trip. Charles in a tuxedo looked like a gentleman from another era. I tried to match the vibe, smiling as the captain welcomed us at the main table. "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for choosing the Majestic Horizon," he said, shaking my hand. I nodded, feeling a flicker of pride, but my wife's family's eyes were on other guests, as if the thanks had nothing to do with them. The dinner began with exquisite dishes, lobster, Wagyu beef and French wine, but I soon realized I was sidelined again. Charles chatted with a businessman across the table, boasting about his Philadelphia connections. Patricia and Elizabeth discussed charity events they planned to host. Emma talked about her new Manhattan apartment, drawing attention from a wealthy couple. Then came the defining moment. The captain, trying to ease the mood, turned to Charles. "Your family is wonderful. It's an honor to have you all here today." Charles raised his glass, smirking smugly, and said, "Thank you, Captain. Though I must admit, it sometimes feels odd having James here. Despite his bit of financial success, he doesn't really belong in these circles, unlike us." Elizabeth nodded slightly, as if agreeing. Emma gave a pitying smile, while Patricia looked down but didn't object. Those words cut like a knife, piercing straight through my heart. In front of everyone, my father-in-law had declared me an outsider, despite my spending nearly $100,000 to bring them here. I set down my knife and fork, excused myself, and left the dinner, keeping my composure despite the rage and hurt boiling inside. I stepped onto the deck, where the Caribbean Sea sparkled under the moonlight. I pulled out my phone and called Ryan Patel, the only friend who always understood me. Though in Seattle, Ryan answered right away, his voice groggy. "James, what's up? It's gotta be late there." I spilled everything, how my wife's family enjoyed all I'd paid for but excluded me, and Charles's words at dinner. He said it right to everyone's face. "Ryan, that I don't belong in their circle." Ryan's tone turned angry. "After you dropped all that money on them, that's not just ungrateful, it's cruel." I sighed. "I don't know why I keep letting them hurt me like this. Like I'm still that kid begging for approval." Ryan paused, then said, "James, you're the CEO of a $350 million company. You've created jobs for hundreds, built something incredible from nothing. You don't need their approval anymore. You hold the power here. You paid. You call the shots." Ryan's words were like a spark in the dark. I stared at the sea, a new resolve rising. "You're right," I said. "I can't keep letting them walk over me." After hanging up, I stood on the deck, letting the sea breeze sweep away the turmoil. Charles's words echoed. He doesn't really belong in these circles. He was partly right. I didn't belong in their world, where worth is measured by appearances and connections. But I'd built my own world, where value comes from persistence, creativity, and integrity. I realized I didn't need to prove anything to them anymore. What I needed was to stand up for my own worth. Back in my suite, I sat on the sofa, gazing through the large window at the pitch-black sea. A plan formed in my mind. I wouldn't leave the ship, but I wouldn't stay the invisible benefactor, letting them bask in luxury while belittling me. It was time to change the game. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I texted Miguel, our butler, requesting a private meeting with Sophia, the cruise director. Miguel replied promptly, his tone polite but concerned. "Mr. Sullivan, I'll contact Miss Sophia immediately. Do you need anything else prepared?" I answered briefly. "Thanks, Miguel. Just need to see her soon." My wife's family was set for a Barbados excursion from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. today. I'd made an excuse about work to stay on board. It was the perfect window to act. An hour later, I sat in Sophia's office, a small but elegant room with a sea view window. Sophia, a middle-aged woman with a professional air, greeted me with a discreet smile. "Mr. Sullivan, Miguel said you wanted to discuss changing your family's accommodations," she asked, her voice calm but sharp. I nodded, cutting to the chase. "I want to know my options, including an upgrade for myself and moving my family to other cabins." Sophia raised an eyebrow but stayed neutral. "Other cabins? What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "My family's in the penthouse suites. I want to move them to standard cabins on deck 7. And I want to know if the owner's suite is available." Sophia checked her tablet, her eyes scanning the data. "As it happens, the owner's suite will be free this afternoon after guests disembark in Barbados. It's significantly pricier than the penthouse suites, but," I interrupted, "money's not an issue. What about the standard cabins?" Sophia nodded. "We have a few on deck 7, comfortable but much simpler than the penthouse suites. I can show you both." Over the next hour, Sophia showed me the owner's suite, a 1,500 square foot space with a grand living room, private dining area, hot tub on the balcony, and expanded butler service. It was like a high-end apartment, far surpassing the penthouse suites in luxury. Then she took me to a standard cabin on deck 7, compact, clean, with a double bed and a small sea view window. The stark contrast was exactly what I needed. "If I make this change, when can it happen?" I asked. Sophia replied, "The owner's suite will be ready right after 2 p.m. when the current guests leave. The standard cabins are ready now. We'd need about an hour to move belongings, as long as your family isn't present." I nodded. "They'll be out until 4 p.m. That's the perfect time." Sophia smiled, her eyes hinting she knew this wasn't just a routine change. Policy-wise, as the one who paid for the entire trip, you have full authority to alter arrangements, she said. We usually seek consensus, but you're the account holder, so the decision is yours. That confirmation gave me a surge of strength. I didn't need Charles, Patricia, or Elizabeth's approval. This was my trip, and I called the shots. Back in my suite, I sat at the desk, staring at the authorization form Sophia had prepared. One signature, and everything would shift. Part of me wondered if this was petty, if I was stooping to their level. But then I recalled Charles's words, Emma's pitying smile, and Elizabeth's silent complicity. They'd made me feel unworthy despite my bringing all this. I signed the form, called Miguel, and asked him to deliver it to Sophia. It's decided, I said, my voice calm but firm. Miguel nodded, asking no questions. I'll ensure it's done as requested, Mr. Sullivan. As he left, a strange peace settled over me. For the first time since boarding, I wasn't anxious about pleasing my wife's family. By noon, Miguel confirmed my family had left for the Barbados excursion, unaware of what awaited them. Sophia called, saying the staff was ready. We'll start moving things now, Mr. Sullivan, she said. At 2:30 p.m. Sophia confirmed it was done. The owner's suite was mine, my belongings neatly arranged. The Deck 7 cabins were ready for Charles, Patricia, Elizabeth, and Emma. Their key cards were reprogrammed. I asked Sophia to be present when they returned, to ensure they knew this was my call. I'll be in the main lobby at 4, I said. I want to explain myself. Sophia nodded. Of course, sir. I'll be there. I stood in the Majestic Horizon's grand lobby, seated in a velvet armchair, gazing at the vast entrance with its gleaming marble floor and gilded columns. My heart raced, but not from the anxiety of days past. This time, it was anticipation, a resolve I'd never felt in dealing with my wife's family. At exactly 4:10 p.m. they entered the lobby, their skin flushed from the Barbados sun, smiles from what seemed a joyful outing. Charles spotted me first, raising a hand in a casual wave. James, here you are, he said, his tone relaxed. You missed a great excursion. The guide used to work for a billionaire European family. Patricia nodded, adding, the scenery in Barbados was breathtaking, though the heat was brutal. I need a cool shower before dinner. Elizabeth and Victoria, pushing Tommy's stroller, were also laughing and chatting about the coastal villages they'd explored. I stood up, taking a deep breath. Before I could say anything, a receptionist approached, her voice polite. Mr. and Mrs. Harper, Miss Victoria, Mr. David, I have your new key cards here. Please follow me to the front desk. Charles frowned, clearly confused. New cards? Must be some mistake. We already have ours. The receptionist gave a slight smile. No mistake, sir. There's been a change in your accommodations. Please come with me so I can explain. The whole family turned to me, their eyes full of suspicion. James, what's going on? Patricia asked, her voice trembling slightly. I stood tall, keeping my tone calm but firm. I've changed your accommodations for the rest of the trip. The penthouse suites have been swapped for standard cabins on Deck 7. As for me, I've moved to the owner's suite. Elizabeth's eyes widened. You did what? Victoria cut in, her voice sharp. Why would you do that? You can't just move our stuff. Charles stepped forward, his face flushed. This is absurd. I demand to see the captain now. Sophia, the cruise director, appeared at the perfect moment. She approached with unshakable professionalism. Mr. Harper, as the one who paid for the entire trip, Mr. Sullivan has full authority to alter any arrangements, she said. We've carefully moved everyone's belongings to the cabins on Deck 7. Everything was done properly. Charles turned to me, his voice lowering as if trying to regain control. James, explain yourself. Is this some kind of joke? I looked him straight in the eye, unflinching. Last night, at the captain's dinner, you said in front of everyone that I don't belong in your family's circle. I've thought a lot about that, and I've decided you're right. I don't belong in your circle. But I also realized something. This trip, all the luxury you're enjoying, suites, restaurants, excursions, it's all because of me. I won't accept being disrespected while providing everything. The lobby fell silent. Nearby passengers pretended not to listen, but their glances stole toward us. Elizabeth stepped forward, her voice soft but tense. James, you're overreacting. We didn't mean to hurt you. I shook my head. Not intentional. Elizabeth, you sat there nodding when your dad said I wasn't worthy. You all enjoyed what I provided but never once acknowledged me. I spent nearly $100,000 to make you happy, only to be treated like an outsider. That stops now. Victoria, usually haughty, went quiet, her eyes wavering. Patricia clutched Elizabeth's hand, looking bewildered. James, why are you doing this? We're family, I replied, still calm. Family doesn't mean you get to belittle each other. I've spent my life trying to earn your approval, but I realize I don't need it anymore. I built my own circle, where people are judged by character, not appearances or connections. Charles tried to interject, his tone now slightly conciliatory. James, maybe we spoke out of turn. We're grateful for this trip. But I cut him off. No, Dad, you were crystal clear, and this time I agree. I don't belong in your circle. I belong where I've created, where success is valued for the real effort behind it. I turned to Sophia. Can you show my family to their new accommodations? The cabins are comfortable though simpler. All the excursions I planned will go on as scheduled. Sophia nodded, gesturing to the staff. Please follow me, sir, madam. Charles still resisted. I won't stand for this. But Sophia replied, her voice gentle yet firm. The captain holds Mr. Sullivan in high regard. He's invited Mr. Sullivan to dine at his private table for the rest of the trip, a privilege typically reserved for owner's suite guests. Those words hit like a final blow. Charles stood frozen. Patricia looked rattled, and Elizabeth bowed her head silent. Victoria suddenly spoke, her voice quiet. James, maybe we were wrong for not appreciating you. Her words caught me off guard, but I just nodded. Thanks, Victoria. But now's the time for me to set boundaries. The new cabins are like what I originally planned to book before I splurged on the penthouse suites. You'll still have a great trip. I just won't let myself be disrespected anymore. I turned and walked toward the elevator to the owner's suite. As the doors closed, I saw my reflection in the polished brass, shoulders back, head high, feeling in control for the first time. I didn't feel smug or bitter. I felt free. My wife's family stood there, holding their new key cards, their eyes no longer arrogant but stunned. I knew this moment had forever changed our relationship. The day after the confrontation, I kept my distance. I had breakfast in my suite, worked on emails, and avoided public areas where I might run into them. The owner's suite was like a private world, with expanded butler service and priority access to every amenity on board. Miguel, my butler, became a reliable companion. He brought coffee each morning, asking with tact, Mr. Sullivan, do you need anything special arranged today? I shook my head, smiling. Thanks, Miguel. Just some quiet. But inside, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Would moving them to standard cabins destroy our relationship for good? Around noon, I heard a soft knock. Opening the door, I was surprised to see Patricia standing there, looking slightly lost in the opulent hallway leading to the owner's suite. James, may I come in? She asked, her voice small and lacking its usual confidence. I nodded, inviting her inside. Patricia stepped in, her eyes widening at the lavish space, an ebony dining table, silk upholstered sofa, and fresh flowers on the table. This place, it's incredible, she said, lightly touching a chair's back. Yeah, I replied, saying no more. She sat down, hands clasped tightly. Charles is furious, you know, she began. He wanted to leave at the next port, but the cancellation fees are too steep. I gave a faint smile, unsurprised. Yes, I know. A long pause hung between us. Patricia studied me, her gaze searching. I've never seen you act like this, James. You've always been so agreeable, I replied calmly. Agreeable's one way to put it. Trying to earn approval is another. Patricia flinched slightly but didn't deny it. She glanced around the room again, then said softly, You've really made something big, haven't you? I don't think I ever truly understood your work. Patricia's eyes welled up, a rare sight for a woman who always maintained a perfect facade. I don't know how to fix this, she said. I replied, It's not about fixing, but acknowledging. Acknowledging that I'm not an outsider in this family. After Patricia left, a strange calm settled over me. The talk didn't resolve everything, but for the first time she'd listened. That evening, I decided to dine in the main restaurant instead of my suite. As I entered, I saw my wife's family at a far table. I hesitated, then approached. Good evening, I said, my voice steady. Charles barely looked up, focused on his menu. Elizabeth seemed anxious, and Victoria was awkward. Unexpectedly, Patricia stood. James, join us? Charles snapped. Patricia. But she cut him off, resolute. Our son-in-law is trying to mend things. We should at least meet him halfway. I sat down, the table tense. We ordered in silence, exchanging only small talk about the food and sea views. Then Victoria spoke up. James, I'm sorry. Everyone turned to her, including me. I'm sorry, she repeated, looking right at me. You were right yesterday. We treated you badly. You paid for this whole trip, and we acted like you didn't matter. Charles cleared his throat, but Victoria pressed on. No, Dad, we were wrong. James didn't deserve that. David, her husband, nodded. The new cabins are actually fine. Better than many cruises. It made me see how ungrateful we've been. Charles stayed silent, his jaw tight, but I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, something I'd never seen before. The meal ended awkwardly, but something had shifted. Over the next days on board, Elizabeth started asking about my company, genuinely listening as I shared about AI projects. Victoria and I had longer talks, starting to build a sibling bond that hadn't existed before. Charles kept his distance, but I caught him glancing at me occasionally, his gaze no longer arrogant, but tinged with curiosity. On the final night at the captain's farewell gala, I wore a simple yet elegant black suit. Charles unexpectedly approached me at the champagne bar. You played a bold move, he said, cutting to the chase. I replied evenly, I learned from watching you over the years. He nodded, a reluctant respect in his eyes. "You're not the son-in-law I pictured," he said. "No, I'm not," I agreed. "I'm someone who built something from nothing, not following a familiar path. I don't need approval, I need respect." Charles paused, then said, "I always thought success had a certain mold. Your way, I don't get it. But I'd like to learn more back home." It wasn't an apology, but for Charles, it was a big step. When the ship docked in Miami, we gathered one last time in the main lobby. Patricia hugged me, saying, "Thank you, James, not just for the trip, but for waking me up." Elizabeth held my hand. "We need to talk more at home. I want to understand you better." Victoria smiled. "Tommy needs a strong uncle to look up to." Charles shook my hand, then pulled me into an awkward hug. "You've done something remarkable, James. Not just the company, but you." 6 months later, I hosted a family dinner at my Seattle home, the first on my turf. Elizabeth helped in the kitchen, asking about my life and friends. Victoria brought Tommy, who clung to Uncle James. Charles, though clumsy, asked about my company's European expansion plans. Old habits crept in, a comparison here or there, but now I responded directly, no longer silently enduring. The story of James Sullivan on the Majestic Horizon reflects the social and family pressures still present in the U.S. today, where individualism and obsession with status often clash. James, a successful Seattle tech CEO, embodies the American dream, from a self-taught coder in Spokane to leading a $350 million company. Yet his wife's family, Charles, Patricia, Elizabeth, and Victoria, disdain his new money roots, mirroring the class divides lingering in American society, where old money and social connections often trump personal achievement. James's bold move, downgrading his family from penthouse suites to standard cabins while taking the owner's suite, was a powerful statement of self-respect, reflecting the American value of standing up for oneself in a competitive society. His lobby confrontation, asserting he didn't need approval but demanded respect, highlights the direct yet polite communication common in American family and work dynamics. The gradual shift in his family, especially Patricia and Victoria, shows the potential for reconciliation when boundaries are set clearly, a reality in modern American families where open dialogue can mend rifts. Advice: in today's U.S., where pressure from family, colleagues, or society can make you feel undervalued, take a page from James. Your worth doesn't hinge on others' approval. Set clear boundaries, as James did confronting his wife's family, and focus on building your own circle where you're respected for who you are. If you're striving to prove yourself, remember that confidence and decisive action, like James signing the accommodation change form, will cement your place in a society that values individualism. If my story about finding self-worth resonates with you, hit the subscribe button and share your experiences in the comments. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next video for more inspiring stories.